Hello everybody and welcome back. I hope everyone had a good spring break. Yeah, here we are, week number 5. Since our last video a couple weeks ago, the climate has changed a little bit. Obviously, the rest of the school year has been called off. So I want to take a second to talk a little bit about what the rest of our classroom experience will be like. It's really not going to look any different from what we've been doing. You're going to get a video like this at the beginning of every week. The video will walk you through the week's calendar. You're going to get new work assigned to you on Mondays and Wednesdays. That work is typically going to take you around an hour to an hour and a half to complete. And then you have until the end of that week to turn in all the work to Turnitin.com. Of course, if you have any questions or concerns, you can reach out to me directly, or you can post your question to the group chat, and then we can all respond there. There is one new thing that we're going to add to the mix, and that is what we're going to call virtual office hours. This is really an opportunity to speak to me directly, but also to anybody else who wants to tune in. I don't have a specific time of when that's going to happen because I want to communicate with all of you through the group chat so we can make sure that we have a time that works best for most of us. Today's a really exciting day because it's the start of a brand new unit. This is one of my favorite units of the year, and honestly, it's kind of a bummer that we're not able to do this, as a class interactively, because I think hearing from students and learning about your experience in the world as a young person is such an important part of the work that we do. I mean, throughout the entire year, but especially in this unit. So I'm going to do the best that I can do. If you have an experience or perspective that you'd like to share, please take a second and post it to the group chat so that we can still have that important back and forth that is such an important part of our course. So today's unit, the start of our unit today, is all about representation, and it's about literary representation. The central text that we're going to be working with are 2 plays. One is by the American playwright August Wilson. It's a play called Fences. The other is by an American playwright named Amiri Baraka, and it's called Dutchman. So the goal of our unit here is to be able to think critically about these moments in American history, but also to look deeply at how these playwrights are telling a story, not just the story that they're constructing themselves, but how the story acts upon the audience. So anyway, let's take a second to jump into the calendar this week, week 5. The first thing that I want you to do is go to the website and read the introduction blurb for this unit. It's so important that we read this blurb because it helps to frame what it is we're doing and why we're doing it. I think it's also important to read the epigraphs up at the top of the calendar because those quotes also really help to shine a light on some of the major voices of our unit. So task number 1 on Monday is just read the blurb, the introduction blurb in the calendar on the website. Then what I'd like you to do is watch a political advertisement. When you read the blurb in the calendar, the very first paragraph says that representation is really complicated. What we're going to be doing is focusing on how representations of racial identity shape and are shaped by popular and public cultures in America. So this unit uses culture as a lens to explore how that system, that is, the system of popular and public culture, functions, and how individuals and groups have worked to challenge or disrupt it, especially in the American theater. So the first thing that I want you to do is watch a political advertisement. This is I would argue, one of the most controversial political advertisements ever created for television. This came out in the 1988 presidential election between the Democratic candidate, a man named Michael Dukakis, and a Republican candidate, a man named George H.W. Bush. And we know that George H.W. Bush was the winner of that election. His campaign released an ad that addressed an issue surrounding a man named William Horton, but the advertisement refers to him as Willie, even though never in his life did he ever go by the name Willie. But William Horton was involved in a crime, and the advertisement uses his criminal background as a way to represent to the American public stories about black criminality. This was a very controversial ad when it aired. It is the subject of a great deal of scholarship even today. Here we are in 2020 and we're talking about an ad from 1988. But what I'd like you to do is begin by watching this advertisement. And then when you're done, I'd like you to read an accompanying piece from the New York Times. And then there's also an embedded video. It's about 3 minutes, and you can watch that. When you're done watching the ad and reading the article, I'd like you to write a reflection about how representations of black men and criminality worked to shape the outcome of the 1988 presidential election. Afterward, I'd like you to comment on how we still see similar stories about black men and criminality circulating in our culture today. Now, if you don't really have an opinion on this issue, or you don't see those stories circulating in our culture, that's an okay perspective too. You can just write about maybe how this doesn't show up on your radar, or maybe you've never given this much thought. But the goal here is to begin thinking about popular stories, how they circulate in our culture, and how they shape popular opinion. Now, for Wednesday's class, you've got several smaller tasks to complete. The first thing that you're going to do is read an article by a scholar. He's actually a really famous American Studies professor named Brent Staples. He's also a columnist for the New York Times. You're going to be reading his piece titled How Blackface Feeds White Supremacy. When you're done with that, you're going to be watching an episode of, I don't want to call it a famous show, I think it's kind of infamous. It was a very popular show in the late 1950s, early 1960s, called Amos and Andy. You're going to be watching an episode titled Kingfish Learns to Fly. And you can watch that, it's available on YouTube for free. When you're done, you're going to complete the Amos and Andy viewing guide, and you're going to post your responses to Turnitin.com. Now, Amos and Andy has a very interesting history, and when you're completing the viewing guide, it's probably going to require you to do some very surface level internet research, like go to Wikipedia, Google some stuff. What I ask is that you not complete the viewing guide or Google the show before you watch the show. I just want you to go in cold, watch the show, and then when you're done, then you can complete the viewing guide. The viewing guide is going to ask you to take all of these sources and place them in conversation with each other, and then that's it for the work of the week. I think this work is so important, and it also raises some important questions that evoke strong feelings. I want to acknowledge that those feelings can be really strong, but I also want to acknowledge that the reason that we engage this content in a classroom space, even a virtual classroom space, is because we want to talk a little bit about how history has brought us to our current moment. And when we have conversations about what we see on TV and why people have strong feelings about what they see on TV, or in an internet video, or in a song, or even during a presidential debate, when we have conversations about why people feel that way, I think it's important to situate it in a historical context too. And that's really the goal of this week. We're going to introduce our unit, situate some historical stuff, and then we're going to move on, read some theoretical content, and then we're going to read 2 plays that are really, really powerful. So it's a bummer that we don't get a chance to see each other in real life, but I'm still really grateful that we get a chance to do this virtually. I look forward to seeing you in a video chat at some point, and we're going to go on and move on from there. I hope everyone is safe and healthy, and yeah, be good to yourself, be good to everybody else, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.